What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Mega Talks podcast. Just want to take a second to thank everybody for the downloads, the streams, the shares, the likes, and keep up the great work. Make sure you go on iTunes, leave a review, subscribe. Also do the same on YouTube and podbean.com. Those are places that you can listen to the podcast or download it. And on another note, make sure you go to my store Envy for Ultimate Expression. The half guard shirts will be in the first week of July, so you'll be able to order there. You can also get the LA Culture shirts. They're 50% off and still have just a few Like a Thief shirts. So go check that out. And just to give you a little bit of rundown on the last 4 episodes of Mega Talks. Episode 14, I spoke with actor-athlete Brandon Grundy, aka Mr. For Real. Episode 15, I spoke with the comedian, goes by the name of Bear the Comic, aka David Bear. Episode 16, I spoke with IFBB pro athlete Christina Reed. Episode 17, I speak with Melanie Hogan, and we talk about her coming from situations of domestic violence, college graduate, and to business owner. On today's episode, I'll talk to a doctorate of education. She's a professor of media communications, also develops curriculums at her current university in areas such as social media, gender studies, media criticisms. She's also a gamer, and we get into some of those discussions, and also she talks a little bit about her role in the feminist movement. Her name is Dr. Nicki Reamer. What's going on, everybody? I'm Chris Thompson. I'm here at Mega Talks, and I'm speaking with Nicki Reamer. And Nicki, is it doctor?
It is, yes. Dr.
Right.
Nicki.
And let's talk about, I know you went to, you're from Ohio and you went to school, I think it's Columbia High School?
Columbian High School. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Now, how,
Nice.
now being the doctor and coming from the high school setting, and once you graduated high school, what motivated you, what inspired you to go into the college life?
So I was, I was always like a smart kid. I was in like an accelerated program. I took all the advanced classes, and so I was just kind of college tracked, the way that they do it with like K through 12 kids. So it was never really, it was just kind of like a default. I was like, I'm going to college. I didn't really ever consider not going. But like things changed a lot once I actually got into college. I was actually there originally to be an accounting major.
Oh, yeah.
I was going to be a CPA, and then I took a full year of like advanced accounting like classes, and I was in the honors program, and I hated it.
And so did just the work change your mind, or?
It was, so when I was in high school, I had a really good numbers brain. I always did really well in math. I took AP calculus. I did well on the exam, but then I was also on the yearbook staff, and I did photography.
Nice.
And so I had just like 2 very different things going on in high school. And so when I went to college, I was kind of encouraged to go the accounting route because I didn't really know what I was doing. I really had no idea. But then after that first year, I signed up for all my classes for my second year, and I hated there wasn't a single class I was looking forward to. And so then just on my own, I switched to the journalism program because I had loved writing and photography and all of that so much in high school. I actually used to write other people's stories for them for a yearbook quite a bit. It was funny. Yeah.
Yeah, I was on yearbook staff for 3 years in high school and done photography.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fun.
I know. And I kind of had that same switch. You would go to college and you're like, this is a drag. And I switched and, studied part journalism, part criminal justice because those were the things that interest me.
And so when I switched to that program, I did really well. I kept business as my minor, but I don't think I actually even technically earned the minor because I didn't do that well in those classes.
Oh yeah.
But then my senior year, I took a class on gender. So it was gender and communication. And that's when I knew I wanted to go to grad school. And that really changed things a lot for me from that point.
Now your college was at Bowling Green, or was it the?
So I got my master's at Kent State University, which is where the like the May 4th, the real May 4th anniversary comes from, when there were 4 students who were shot and killed on campus, amongst other injuries, but during a Vietnam protest. And that I did my MA there in communication studies, and then I went to Bowling Green for my PhD, which is in American culture studies.
And you currently teach right now. You're currently a college professor?
Yes, I am an assistant professor of media communication at the University of Arkansas, Fort Smith.
And what is media communication? Because I know you probably get asked that question by either people that are, just wanting to go to college or don't know quite the field that they're getting into. What does media encompass?
So we do a lot of different things here. In particular, we wear a lot of hats, and so like the classes I teach are a little bit more. So I do sort of like our theory, our new media stuff, like journalism. So we have some mass communication elements in there, which is communications. And so like we do some like basic writing. We have quite a few production courses, especially with the way we sort of redesigned our curriculum going forward. A lot of different like classes that can get you prepped to do either in front of or behind the camera work. If you want to work for a news station, we've got several students who are going on to be like news writers. We have other students going on to grad school to do a little bit more like the track I went, which is more media literacy, like studying media, that kind of stuff.
Now, have you done work in front of the camera?
I have not. No, I was a print journalist. So I wrote articles. I was and I think I was an assistant editor before I stopped working for our student newspaper in undergrad.
So it's on more the writing field as opposed to camera work, absolutely, or live production.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not a production person. I don't have that. Is not a skill set I possess.
And do y'all, as far as the curriculum, do y'all involve things like current social media aspects of
yes,
media communication?
That's what I do. So we have a class called Survey of New Media. And a big thing I do with that is, it's like history of different social networking sites, different new media technology, and like trends, ways that people are using them. And we added a class called Writing for New Media, which will be offered next spring. And I think it's going to be one of mine. And one big thing I'm really interested in doing with that class is talking about the ways that you can be a like social media manager. Yeah. And like so like studying the ways that people get into those careers, and crisis communication is another big part of being like it's kind of like, it's a little bit like PR, public relations. So anytime like so sort of like Sarah Huckabee Sanders is kind of constantly being a crisis communicator. That's one area you can go into, but one thing I'm really excited about doing is looking at all of the comedic ways that corporations use their Twitter accounts in particular. Yeah. Like I don't know if you've ever seen those, but my students go crazy for it. And it's very clearly like a millennial thing, but it's somebody's job. Somebody's making a lot of money to be like funny at Burger King,
And that's just using like social media, like Twitter or something.
Yep.
I've seen a lot of companies, they do their, I guess, troubleshooting and support and take complaints on Twitter more than they do socialize.
Yeah, and so it's kind of a new trend that they'll have like a tech support account and they'll have like a face of like the corporation account. And they're starting to have a lot more fun with those ones.
Mm-hmm.
Like recently, I don't know if you saw IHOP changed
Yeah.
its name to IHOB,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like it
That
was
took off.
yeah, it took off. And a big part of what took off was the way that like Wendy's, Burger King, even Moon Pie, their different accounts were
Uh-huh.
making fun of them and stuff. Because IHOP said that they were coming for all round shaped foods. And Moon Pie stepped in and was like, "Excuse me."
Yeah, and at the time I didn't know they were that serious. I thought it was just like
Yeah,
a
I didn't
celebration for the
either.
day. They were gonna like serve burgers. That's what I
So did
thought.
I. Yeah, I don't think anybody expected it to go the way that it did.
Yeah. How do you think the social media these days has taken away from the TV, news, and radio? Um, the transition between those medias.
So I would say TV probably there. I don't think that social media takes much away from TV. I think new media maybe in general, like with the switch to streaming, but
Mm-hmm.
a lot of really smart, TV conglomerates are either finding ways to make good partnerships with like Netflix or Hulu, or they're
Oh
finding
yeah.
a way to like maintain their audiences.
Mm-hmm.
And there's still good TV, and there's still tons of people who pay for those expensive cable packages, or older people who don't want to stream, and most people have a combination anyway.
Yeah.
Radio, on the other hand, radio definitely has taken a hit, which is sad. But they still have a lot of really dedicated people who commute, like anybody who spends time in their car. For the most part, people
Yeah.
will listen to the radio still.
Mm-hmm.
But it's definitely a struggle with the way Pandora and Spotify and even Apple Music has taken off.
Hmm.
But social media in general, I don't think it has much of an impact on like TV and radio as much as like the larger concept of new media has.
Do you think newspapers are still they fall far behind?
Yeah, like, unfortunately. And so we watch some good. So when I teach the intro class, we talk about print and like the death of print,
Yeah.
and we watch some like a good documentary on the New York Times, and it's actually right when WikiLeaks came out, and they're starting to transition to having like an like a serious online presence. It's also like right when the iPad was released, and so
Yeah,
this
I remember
documentary is
that.
a little bit old, but it's amazing for these students to see that, because for them it's like, holy crap, they were so little when this happened, and it's actual history to them.
Yeah.
But like physical newspapers have made like a tiny, tiny, tiny little comeback in some areas. And I joke around about this in class, but it is kind of cool. The way that hipsters sort of like lash on to certain trends, like the whole like the Portland scene, basically like wanting to be like retro. And so some groups of younger people have started to get physical paper subscriptions again and read
Yeah.
them. But in general, the newspaper industry isn't doing very well, and they're having to make some pretty scary choices
Mm-hmm.
that really compromise journalistic ethics in the first place.
Oh wow. They have to make that grab after an audience.
Yep, and they not because it's not even like, so there's definitely that, but it's not even that. They're like from like the top down. They end up merging or being bought by people who have like very specific interests in like what the newspaper will end up doing, or they merge with other markets, and then you end up seeing where you have like one news outlet that controls like
Mm-hmm.
way too much of the information in a certain area.
Yeah. Now, do you think because I know when I took an intro class, they teach you how to write articles, and they teach you specific words to use. They want you to bring action, and they want you to have like at least 3 words that kind of display action to the reader
Mm-hmm.
or the listener. Do you think sometimes that can kind of I guess get misconstrued as like fake news to like the reader, like people overdo it?
Yeah, if they overdo it, for sure, especially with the way the title culture we have right now, like clickbait titling with articles. We also have this very interesting trend with certain online news outlets, which I tell my students, I call them snarkticles, where they're just like they're just kind of mean, like mean spirited. They're written with like a certain tone. And once you have like anything like that on a news site, I think it's like poison.
I think it gives them a label.
Exactly. And so then it filters out people. I think without having physical newspapers as much anymore, the subsections of newspapers or like news in general starts to blend together, and people don't understand the difference between like an editorial or an op-ed or, actual hard news. And so like language is obviously very important, especially with like, being catchy or using very specific types of words
because when I see
pull people in.
When I see mass devastation and I read the article and it just says something about a couple of injuries, I'm like, this wasn't what I thought it was going to be.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, and that is a big part of it is, like going down that, because like we have there's a couple different lists of like what makes news, and it's like the more people it affects, the more newsworthy it is. And so using terms like mass or I've seen the word epic show up in so many titles, and I wish that you could just like remove that word from language in general. But
you go ahead and need the word police.
Yeah, basically. Like, you've gone over your limit. Problematic, can no longer be used for the next week.
Oh yeah. I listened to this one podcast is by Jamie Josta, and he's like he has the lyric police, and he talks about different songs where they just overuse certain phrases like, the chants, the die and power and slay and all that stuff. And it's like, you've overused those terms so much, we need to stop using them.
Yeah.
And coming up in the media world, do you get involved in a lot of the business aspect of, like building companies or, company law or things like that? Or is it just more the execution?
We have a law class. I don't teach it. And so I am going to be brushing up on this a lot more, especially with the AT&T Time Warner crap that's going on right now. And so one of the new classes we've added, which will be offered in the fall, and I'm working on it this summer, is called media criticism. And a big part of that is understanding more of the business side of things. We do like a very, very quick sort of 1 week on it in intro. Sort of, it's part of like, the general introduction to MediaCom textbook. But in this class, we're going to look at it a little bit more critically and sort of understanding a bit more about like gatekeepers and agenda setting and that kind of stuff.
That's cool. And when you put a class together, is that something that you do yourself, or do you have like a team?
So depending on what it is, I mean, like I'll consult with other people who I know who have taught a similar class, whether it's here or my previous institutions, or but in general, we are all responsible for our own individual classes if we're like the primary professor. And so we currently offer 2 sections of intro, and in the fall, it'll be the first time I'm not teaching both, but the adjunct who is going to take the other section is letting me just hand him the class.
Oh yeah.
And he's got his own freedom, but in general, and so like there is, like it sounds weird, but there is a little bit of a hierarchy to the way that classes are, done like that. The more experience you have, the longer that you've done it, then you have more free reign with how to like construct a course. But when I was a grad student, it was like, here is what you're teaching, and that's it.
I've always been interested how those classes come about, in a college where the professors, doctors had the liberties of bringing their own classes, or if the college gods come down and say, hey, you're teaching this.
And so sometimes that does happen, and it really depends on the program. And so when we were working on curriculum revision, like all of us together, we were like, here are some classes that we're all thinking about, and we all looked at the descriptions, we all looked at like the learning objectives, but when it comes to execution of the actual class, how the full semester goes is up to you, as long as it fits within the description, what you're supposed to accomplish, and the topics that you're supposed to be teaching.
Well, what's your favorite class out of the ones that your department offers?
I actually love Survey of New Media. That is one that it was an existing class. I really made it my own. Students really seem to get a lot of enjoyment out of it. But that's from the old curriculum. So coming into the new curriculum, I have a feeling like Survey of New Media will always be like my baby. Like, I love that class. But media criticism is one that I was really, really excited to add. And so I'm very pumped. We do have, I did actually teach a special topics class last summer. And so this is kind of getting at what you're, a little bit of what you were saying. Like, you wonder if professors have just total free reign. Yeah. And sometimes we do. And so we can do that under what's called a special topic offering, which means it's a class maybe that is a one-off. It may never get offered again. I'm teaching one this summer that falls into that as well. And so last spring, I taught one called Gender, Media, and Culture. And it is my favorite class I've ever taught. And we propose to add it to a gender studies minor, and that is still in the works. But if that goes through, this will be an actual class that gets added. And the one I'm teaching this summer is on television and the portrayal of socioeconomic statuses. Wow. And so we're mostly looking at working class and blue collar sort of TV shows, more along sitcoms. I think comedy is a good vehicle for critique.
Yeah, and it can also deliver a message.
Yes, yeah. And so people I think are more receptive to these types of messages if they can also laugh. But the only two shows that we'll watch that aren't comedic are The Wire and Shameless. But I mean, Shameless is kind of funny, and The Wire is definitely not.
Now, another subject I know you talk was a class about video games.
Yes, yeah, I actually just taught that this spring, and so I also love that class, and that's one I've made my own, and I made some good changes to it going forward. And that was a class I inherited from the man who was our previous chair, who took a position in Germany, I believe. And this was his, one of his passion projects was the video game class. And I took it over because I studied video games with my dissertation. I play video games. I like video game culture. I enjoy being kind of part of that world.
Do you still have time to play?
I actually have made time. I have a whole list of games to play this summer. And I played some stuff during the semester, but only on weekends. Oh yeah.
What's on your list?
So a student gave me this double pack revamped Metro game. I've never heard of it, but he was like, I think you would like it. And so he just gave it to me, and I was like, okay, I'll play it.
Is it for PC?
It's for PS4. So I have a PlayStation 4. And so that's nice. What I play. There are a couple, there's just some games that I'll play and then I'll get distracted and I'll never finish, or I won't finish them to completion. And I'm a real completionist. So there's a couple I just want to go back to. I haven't finished playing all of the extra content for a game in one of my favorite series, which is Borderlands. I'm finishing the Borderlands 2 extra stuff. And then I have the pre-sequel to play still.
Pre-sequel to Borderlands?
Yeah, it's called it's literally called the pre-sequel.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's awesome. But then a student, so one of the projects that they do in the game class is the final project is a critique of video games. They pick a game and they have to play it, and then they critique it and talk about all this different stuff. But one student had a game, and it was Far Cry 5, I think. Yeah. And the way he described it sounded awesome. So I asked him, I was like, do I need to know how to play any of the other ones? He was like, nope. He was like, you can just pick this one up and play it. So that one's on my list. Some of the Assassin's Creeds are on my list. I also want to go back and play Fallout 3.
Yeah, a lot of these games are so in depth that it seems like it would take a lifetime of dedication just to play them.
Yeah, it really would. I also told my students that I would play Fortnite They really wanted me to play Fortnite. I
Have you
recently
played it yet?
downloaded it. I haven't. I opened it.
Yeah.
I like, it's installed. I like looked at it. I kind of started it.
I just
I
really started
downloaded
playing
it.
it last week because
Oh yeah,
my kids have been playing it, and I watched them play. So I've
your
played a
daughter
couple of
too.
times. Yeah, she plays. So I got in there, and it's I don't know. It starts to get addicting after a while because you
Yeah,
start learning what to do. But I didn't think you would catch on that fast, as fast as I anticipated.
yeah. So I'm gonna play that at some point, and then I downloaded H1Z1, which is kind of similar
Yeah.
to Fortnite. I did play some training in that, and I'm not good, but
Oh yeah.
I am. I mean, like I don't claim to be a good gamer. I just really like them.
You just for your entertainment.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's the way I am. I'm not trying to be the best on the block, but I'm trying to have some
exactly.
fun.
Yeah, exactly.
Now in that H1Z1, I hadn't played that. Do you have to build stuff, or is it
I
just
see.
like,
I was just doing like the combat training, and
oh, okay.
so I don't know if you do.
Hmm.
It seems like that is not because like the impression I get in Fortnite is that it's part Minecraft, part like Call of Duty.
Yeah, because you have to fight, and then you basically need to build like your fortress and fight from your cover. And I don't like doing that.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'll hide behind
So
a tree.
yeah, that's not really that appealing to me.
Yeah.
So, um, but yeah.
Now, so when the students start off in your video game class, um, it takes us from beginning kind of to the middle and to the end. You've already kind of talked about the end that you play a video game and
Yeah.
critique it, but your first day of class was kind of mystery.
So
What could I expect?
so first day of class, you'd come in, we'd go through the syllabus and schedule. And I make a very big point to say, like, if you don't know how to play games, if you've never played them, you're just kind of taking it for the upper level credit. It's totally fine. By the end of it, you'll have an understanding, you'll have an appreciation, you'll make it through is basically like what I say. And I do build a lot into the course so that if students don't even have their own like consoles or they don't have any video games to play, they can still do the assignments
Mm-hmm.
in some way with like, no cost to them. And because I accept like mobile gaming at
Oh,
a
okay.
lot for
Yeah.
for things that they'll do. And so the beginning of the class, we sort of like for like the first couple weeks, it's sort of an establishment of like why is this even a college course? Who cares? Like, is this something you can major in?
Yeah, because I didn't know it existed until
Yeah,
I heard it from you.
yeah, and so a lot of people don't know that. At much larger universities, you actually even have programs that are all about video games, like the study of and things like that. So it's almost like you'd have like a film, like you could major in film or minor in film. There are some places where they're moving toward that with gaming,
Mm-hmm.
and so I established this as like an academic field, what it means to actually study these from an academic perspective, and then we go into like the history. I do a pretty in-depth history of gaming from like the beginning and forward. We
That's
watched
nice.
we watched quite a few documentaries and stuff, and so students were really. I thought it was like really cool to find out about like the history of Atari
Oh yeah, for
and
sure.
the ET game, everything that happened with that, and I offered them extra credit because Ready Player One came out during the semester, and I offered them extra credit to go see it and like write about it. And so like I try to like tie it into like the world as much as possible, or like the country, I should say, the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so once we move out of like history, establishing it as a field, how to like study and like look at video games, that's kind of like the first half of the course. Then their midterm project is to pick a game and do like a pop culture style review, like you would see on IGN.
Mm-hmm.
And so it doesn't have to be academic. It's just it's supposed to be fun. And it's a way for them to sort of pick a game and get a little bit more familiar with it. And then, they look at certain elements that we talk about in class. Like they could focus just on story. They could focus on art. They could focus on actual gameplay, like bugs, things like that. And the only rule is it has to be like within like the last like 2 years or so.
Oh, yeah.
I let them go older for the final, but And then after that, I like to, I don't know, it's probably getting a little formulaic and boring to my students at this point, but I have a very particular way that I teach a lot of my classes, which is I just pick a handful of subtopics and then we'll just break them down. So we did a couple weeks on like esports and gaming and education, or like the gamification of life, which is when you take something really mundane and you apply game theory to it. So like various like apps that you can download on phones now, or
Yeah.
here's one for you. So like fitness apps, basically.
Oh yeah.
So like when you get like points for doing certain things, or you can link up with buddies and encourage people, or you can get trophy like with the Fitbit stuff, you can get like trophies for
Yeah.
like hitting certain milestones, and so that's gamification.
Oh, okay.
And so we'll
That's
talk
cool.
about that, and I usually do fitness for that section, like talking about the way fitness is gamified.
Yeah, there's a VR game that comes with the PlayStation 4, and it has something that you work on this I guess assembly line. And my daughter, she told me about it, and I'm like, that's not a game. I'd be like, I don't think I could go out and get a job instead of playing the game.
Oh God,
wouldn't be one I would play overnight.
No. So like some other topics we talk about are like the way like women are treated or portrayed in games. So like we'll talk about like hypersexualization of characters. I also talk about race in games. I can't remember if I did this last time, but I usually do a section on race.
A lot of the anime, they seem to go pretty over the top with the characters.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Just their makeups and how they look, just visualization of them.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask you, what do you do outside of like the college life? I call it the college life because being a professor, and is there an escape where that kind of gets you away from everything else, or?
So, I mean, in general, like this is terrible. I watch a lot of TV. And I call it, it's research. I do get a lot of project ideas from like how, like crap I watch, or, I'll find new things to put into my classes because I make my students watch a lot of like movies or TV shows and stuff like that. And so I'm always looking for new content. I also think it's important to just kind of like know what's popular to like better, relate to students, because students are always watching TV too, like Netflix and chill, like,
Oh yeah, you definitely have to keep up with things, because I find the more rounded you are, the better connection you have, with the students that come in, because if they're by chance they're probably taking in the information in themselves.
So the great thing is also when I'm able to take class concepts and I'll be like, oh, on like this show when this character did this, and they're like, oh my God, yeah, it helps to ground things. And so I do, yeah. So I like, I watch a lot of TV. Like I play video games, and I have a good group of friends around town. Like we'll like go out here and there, but I do trivia every Monday at Core.
Oh yeah.
And I'm on a pretty good team that sort of like adopted me in.
That's cool.
Yeah. And so that's really fun. I tend to be like their like more tech pop culture savvy like teammate. I'm by far the youngest one on the team. If any of them ever hear this, I'm so sorry. But it is true.
Just the facts. Just stating the facts.
Yeah. But I love them, and I love that experience. And it was actually one of the first real like out there things I did on my own here. And it's really stuck with me.
Kind of got you kind of embedded into the community here.
Yeah, I've met so many people doing that.
Was it hard? Was it hard making the switch from Ohio to Arkansas?
Very, yeah. I've only even really gotten like feeling like homey and more accustomed to Arkansas in the last like here, and I've been here for about 3 years now. I still miss Ohio a lot, especially in the winter. I love snow.
Oh,
Like
really?
I've always loved snow. I love the cold. I love the layers.
Is the winter the same as it is here?
No, God. Winter here is pathetic. It shouldn't even be called winter. It's a shame that this is winter. Yeah, because like I went back to Ohio around like Christmas, and the one day I left, it snowed here.
Oh,
or it snowed for like one day while I was gone, and then never again. So I've actually never seen like snow or even like ice here.
Yeah, I think it ices a whole lot more than it snows.
Yeah, I've heard that.
You know, it doesn't really bother me a whole lot because it really doesn't change the way I do things. It may change, school being open or closed, but I don't know. You kind of get used to it. I know that sounds crazy for down here because people in New York, Ohio, those places, they're used to it.
Yeah. Because I actually lived in the snow belt when I was getting my master's. And so there were days, like I have a picture somewhere where my car is buried up to the hood.
Oh, man.
Because it snowed so much.
Shoot.
Yeah.
That's way too much for me.
Yeah, it was a lot. We definitely didn't have school. That was for like a few days.
Now going back through some of the things that you taught in your classes now, you talked about a little bit about gender studies. And tell us about that.
So gender studies encompasses a lot of different things. A lot of the time, people think it's just about women, like women's studies, but I try to cover as many topics as I possibly can and make sure that we're talking about the ways in which like masculinity is also formed and the way that it affects men currently and in the past, and all these different misconceptions that we have about gender roles. And so a big thing that we do that we did in the gender studies class, or like my gender media and culture class last spring, is that I would take 1 week where we looked at like good or bad portrayals of like men and women. And so my film unit, this one I was really proud of because I loved the movies I showed. But for the film unit, we talked about
which movie did you say?
So for the women, we talked about the final girl trope in horror and like how that is formed and like what it means to be like a girl in that landscape. And then for men, we talked about blockbuster bodies, which is a concept developed by her name is escaping me, an academic in like the 90s, and it was looking at like 90s action movies and the way that we started to see men sort of just explode. And so we watched Terminator 2 for that one.
Yeah.
And so we just talk about how like damaging that is to anybody,
because it forces people, an image to live up to, and sometimes it can be unachievable.
And so I also helped out with a program with the Greek life coordinator this past spring. It was called Mandated Masculinity, where we just met with some of the fraternity men, and we talked about like how limiting it can be to have like a very certain type of man you're allowed to be, or ways that you can express your, because like male on male friendships are usually far less intimate than any other type of friendship. And it's because of the way that we sort of societally, we kind of put these things on men.
You got to be tough.
Exactly.
You can't show weakness.
You can't cry, you can't hug, if I went forever without getting a hug from somebody, I would be really angry and aggressive all the time too.
I found that something different that a lot of people in the martial arts community and in some other communities, I'm sure as well, that when we see each other, we give a good handshake and we also hug. I mean, it's not like, men aren't going to do the like full frontal hug unless you're like family, but you get a good hug from somebody.
Yeah. See, even there though, you qualified it. We're not going to do the full frontal hug.
Oh,
well, why not?
But like if our shoulders are aligned, then that's,
yeah,
we better be wrestling.
I think think maybe with that particular area, that sport in general, you do have a lot of contact with one another. And so, maybe it's not as big of a deal because like you are going to get close.
Oh yeah. So we always say if we don't make eye contact, it's okay.
Wow.
But in the process of those things, you're strictly thinking about the art or what you're doing or this move or that move. You're not thinking about this is my buddy. Your mind is somewhere else, and that's not what you're trying to accomplish. So, but I mean, you do have those occasions where it's awkward.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. Do you now in the gender studies though, what do you do on the flip side as far as like to study female?
So that is pretty classic. That's what I did fem theory and I've done a ton of stuff like that. So with that, there certainly is more to talk about when it comes to women within gender studies. Like, so when I teach a version of this course that's not centered around media, I spend a lot more time doing like the history of this kind of stuff. So like the different like feminist movements, the different waves of feminism, the different ways that like women have fought for certain rights. But a big thing that I'm constantly pushing is being an intersectional feminist, or just having an intersectional understanding of identity in general, which that means to realize that no one is like just a woman or just Black or, like just a certain age, and you need to understand the way all of these things kind of, the identity is multiplicative and that they all impact one another.
Yeah.
And so that I spent some time early in the semester talking about how we will always be, for the most part, intersectional in our understanding and in our discussions. And so, like in particular, how, when I'm talking about that with this class right now too, like how class has a huge impact on the way that you develop as a person as well. It's not just your sex and gender and all that stuff. And so we also talk about like the different like differences in like understanding like language to more accurately discuss people. So we talk about like trans and cis identity and sexuality and like gender on a spectrum and stuff like that. But with women, some of the topics that obviously we talk about are sexual assault, women in the workplace, kind of like the history of like workplace rights for women, equal pay is a topic. A lot of different stuff like that. So like sexual assault in general, when I didn't do that with this class in the spring because it didn't really fit in with it. But when I taught this course during my MA program, gender and communication, and that was one that we proposed to add to the gender studies minor as well. And in that one, anytime we did sexual assault, it was just like, it was a very difficult discussion for the students to have, especially on a college campus, because sexual assault on a college campus is
always
like rampant.
Yeah. So the more you talk about it, the more, lack of better terms, the more comfortable somebody should be for coming forward. I mean,
yes. Yeah,
it's not going to be comfortable one way or the other, but
no, yeah. But I make a very big deal about being an extremely like open and accessible professor, and so I've definitely had some very tough conversations with students who feel like they can confide in me.
Now, do you feel like over your studies, do you feel like the gender stuff is more prevalent in America than other countries, or is it the same in other countries as well?
I think it just manifests itself differently a lot of places. Like some areas of the world definitely do a better job with their treatment of women, like different what is it, like the Netherlands, that area, they're constantly being held up as being like much more fair, much more egalitarian with the way that they treat women or the way that they understand women. But a big part of that is also, but at the same time what maybe isn't working as well for them. And so it's like, again, it's like this intersectional understanding of like, maybe they're treating one group well, but not another.
Yeah.
Like here in particular, I don't know what the hell is going on anymore, but like it seemed like we were doing okay for a bit, and then things just really plummeted. And then we have all of these different, we have a lot of different hashtag movements which are taking off. They do seem to be making an impact, but it's not really. It's more so like shining light on a problem, but then that's it, kind of.
Yeah, there's no goal, to reach. It's just like we're pointing the finger.
And it's not even necessarily that. It's that so many of these attitudes need to be addressed before they get to the point where we're talking about adults having these issues. We need to talk to children. We need to make sure that like we don't get to that point where for whatever reason in elementary school all of a sudden, boys and girls just can't play together anymore. They get like separated into like different groups. Which is, part of that is puberty, but something needs to happen much earlier than what is happening now.
Yeah. Have you found that, just in your research and talking to people that talking about sexism, racism so much that, some of the people have, kind of broken it down and treat people as people, but they've also morphed and substituted their beliefs, aka their their beliefs, aka their political agendas to judge people on, like people, conservatives and liberals. That's replaced males and females or blacks and whites.
Ooh, that's a good question. I think that it has become a new type of sort of like identity politics, if you want to put it that way. Like, it's people find out that you're a Democrat or a Republican or you're a liberal or a conservative, and then it's immediately like, well, I hate you, and these are all the stereotypes I have about you now. I try very hard to be like not non-identifying in a lot of different ways.
The political type feel.
Yeah. Because like I don't want to identify with anybody because at this point we all suck. But it's only when you're like, and so I do want to clarify, it's when you kind of take a position where it's like you are a capital L liberal or you are a capital C conservative, where you are just like living that life like hard and fast, and it's like you live and breathe like being a liberal. And so you more or less you kind of are the stereotype, or you feed into the stereotype, whatever it is. And I think that that tends to silence a lot of other people who maybe would agree with you, or I don't know. People just love to yell so much now. Yeah,
because I see people they get attacked for just one belief. It's not a series of beliefs. It's just like maybe they had a thought that day, or maybe they had stood up for something in particular, and somebody say, "Well, that's a liberal, that's a very conservative way of thinking. So, now it's time to protest just against you." And really what they're saying is, I don't like you because of your color, or I don't like you because of your gender.
Yeah.
But they hide behind the political agenda.
I absolutely think that's a big concern. That happened quite a bit with both Obama and Hillary. Like it's undeniable to say that there were people who were literally just like, no, I will not have a black president or support him, or no, there's no way that a woman will become president. Because there were definitely people out there, and so I think that does happen. Like there is that masking of like actual intention, or and some people may not even realize they're doing it. Like it could be like we have such deeply embedded like subconscious bias that we don't realize this is what's happening. But I mean, like the approach I always take with this kind of stuff is and this is super utopian. Like I just wish that we could just talk, it's like, just talk through it, figure out what's going on, figure out what's at the root of the problem. Like where did this idea or attitude come from in the first place? What has actually happened to reinforce or dispel it this whole time anyway, and so I try to talk through a ton of this kind of stuff in class, like give my students the opportunity to talk to each other. I have like very strict discussion policy that like, you never take things personally. You can never bash other people. Like it's all about like trying to talk.
Yeah. Communication.
And yes, exactly. And I have that attitude on my own as well. And I've definitely betrayed that sometimes, where I'll get really fired up and I'm like, well, I'm not F you, I'm not talking to you anymore. But I try very, I try very hard, to just sort of talk to people.
Yeah. I found that people will talk in a one-on-one setting a whole lot, more honest.
Yes.
Than a group setting. In a group setting, I'm the same way. Sometimes I'll hold back. I won't say certain things in particular, but one-on-one, you probably find out a whole lot more information.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And because like I recently had a conversation with a guy. This was like, I guess it wasn't that recent. Time just collapses. This was like a month ago. Where we clearly have very different stances on certain topics, but I was very open to talking to him, and he was open to talking to me. We had a great conversation, and then he was even at the end, he was like, "Wow, I've never actually talked to somebody like who thinks like you before, like this." And I was like, "That's what I tried."
Now you have and this is one thing I call the labels is whether they be gender or anything else. Mm-hmm. You do a type of feminism thing, mm-hmm. And what's the actual name? It's not called feminism, but what's the name of the group, organization, whatever you want to call it?
So technically, like feminism is sort of an ideological stance, and there are so like here, like it's really feminisms. There's a ton of different like types of feminism, and so. What I always say, like if anybody ever asks me to want to like be like what are you, like what's your actual position, I'd say I'm an intersectional feminist. Mm-hmm. But like I have leaned much more towards like radical or social feminism previously. And here I am. I work not to identify myself, but I would never call myself a liberal feminism feminist. Certainly not a conservative one either, but. That's in general, like I think that when it comes to feminism, it's all about sort of just living it, instead of like putting like tally marks in certain places, like, well, I did this, so that goes on my feminist card, or I went to this protest and I made this particular sign, or I contributed to this like hashtag. I think it's an entire embodiment, and like certainly there are so many people who do this, men, women, everything, and but I think that we have such a stigma around feminism that because it's like with any movement, any group of people, like you have a couple of people who speak up or don't speak up, or get mislabeled, or their words get misconstrued, and then all of a sudden everything is tainted, kind of like what I was talking about with the news earlier. And so like it's all about this being sort of and I kind of explained this to my students when we talked about methodologies for how to like approach studying. So this whole like ontological, epistemological, and methodological sort of ways you approach doing research, and ontology sort of sits at the top, and it's like the biggest like guiding principle. And so like just to my core, I sort of believe certain things about people, like I want to believe in the good. I want to believe that we can all like there's something good about everybody, that we can all get along, again, really utopian. But
you're looking more or less for balance, rather than not trying to sway the tables.
And so like exactly. And so like I don't believe in reverse hegemony, which is sort of like this whole, well, if women were all in charge, things would be better. It's like, no, because again, if you're thinking intersectionally, you still have people with a lot of money, a lot of political power, whether they're men or women, they're going to have a particular agenda, and they're going to want that agenda to go their way.
Yeah.
And so I'm more for balance, egalitarian, partnerships, egalitarian, like ways to like, for things to operate. And clearly clearly hierarchy exists in like all different segments for particular reasons. You have somebody with more education, more training, they're in charge. But I think that we have gotten really, really, really messed up with the way some of our things operate here. Like when you have CEOs who make ungodly, unspendable amounts of money, and their workers, can't even afford a 1-bedroom apartment on their salaries.
That's that's a story within itself, because it's one of the things I'll talk about is employers don't seem like employers these days. They seem more like they don't understand you work for a certain person, but they kind of stomp on you, basically saying, you're either going to do what I say, you're not going to be here, and therefore you're not going to have a job, and you can't survive in life without me, because once you're gone, nobody else is going to touch you from here, because I'm going to totally ruin your life and have the power to do it.
Yeah.
Therefore, they're going to pay you a smaller wage, and that you become a slave at that point. You're no longer an employee.
Yes, I mean that dichotomy is it's scary and upsetting. And I guess like the biggest thing is like there's just a complete and total lack of like humanity in that.
Yeah, no respect
situation.
for anybody.
Yeah,
it's like you go through the process, you go through the steps A, B, and C. You say it and you smile, but that's not what your actions say. Mm-hmm. That's one of the, I don't know, it's one of the weirdest things I've witnessed.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's one of the things I talk about is the people wearing labels, because you hear the word the feminism or anything, or hear gender or racism, and they'll turn and go the other way because there's that label and they're scared to talk about it. But it's probably from their experiences in life hasn't been so positive with those issues.
I think that's a big thing.
Yeah. And in my field, we found out that's, sometimes it's how people grow up. You grow up and everything just seems normal to you. But when you're actually trying to make a difference in somebody else's life, your morals are influenced upon somebody else. Mm-hmm. And that person, judges you based on your morals, whether you call it judgment or not.
Yeah. And that's a very tough, that's a tough realization, or it's a tough thing to face, to like you said, like you grow up and you think things are like, this is how it is. Or like maybe you grew up in like a small town and, you never really got to know a ton of other people. Then you move somewhere larger, and then all of a sudden you're confronted with all these, like, a very diverse group of people, and it can make you uncomfortable. Or maybe something you say, somebody's like, well, that's terrible. That's super racist. And it's a really conflicting thing to be like, well, I have done and lived like this my whole life, and you're attacking me for that. So you're attacking me, or you're attacking my family, or, my hometown. And it's hard to have those conversations, especially for, especially like kids. Like, I mean, like, let's not pretend that like 18, 19, 20-year-olds they're still kids, and, they're cognitively not done. And there's a lot going on, and it can be very difficult, to ease into those conversations, let alone be like confronted aggressively with an attitude or a belief that you've held, your whole life without ever questioning.
Do you think they should have classes like like you teach? Do you think they should have something like that in high school?
Oh, absolutely. Like it would probably be a very difficult thing to do, but like I think that there should be some sort of like, gender, race sort of discussion that happens throughout all of K through 12. Because I don't think it's something that needs to be limited to high school, even like when you're talking about students who can understand like more complex concepts, because elementary school age children, like they get it, they look around, they see what's going on, they see what people are doing. Yeah. And I think that, understanding differences might make navigating that time in life a little bit easier. because man, kids are mean.
Oh, they can be.
Like I would never go back to being in like if I ever had a time in my life to redo, it would definitely not be before I graduated high school.
Some people, that's the spot they would go, but
Yeah.
I'm not all sure. I think there's other areas that could be redone before that.
And I tell my students like a lot in class. I'm like, even when you get here your first year, you're going to change so much by the time you graduate. Like
Yeah.
you just have you just like you can't help it. You know, you're exposed to different things, you're learning more things, your brain is changing still.
Yeah.
Like the brain still forms until you're like 26, something like that.
Yeah, because I think everybody after high school, they say, I'm never going to change. I'm going to go out in college. I'm going to do this. I'm going to be this. And the minute you graduate, if you go to college or if you don't go to college, I think you just change because you're out of that high school element and you see everything different.
Yeah, for sure.
What do you say to people out there that say, I'm not the least bit interested in going to college? I have no desire to go to college. Well, what do you say to those people?
I mean, honestly, I am of the mind. I mean, like, I am only, I was the first person in my family to go to college. And I was the first woman in my extended family to get a master's degree. And I am the only person in my family with a doctorate. Like, college was for me. Like, I wanted to go to college. And, my brother went for like a semester and hated it, dropped out, never went back. And he doesn't talk about ever going back to school. It wasn't for him. And that was basically the attitude my dad always had. It wasn't for him. He was good with that. And so I think if a person is happy in what they're doing, happy in their life, they don't think that they could benefit from college, I think that that's fine. But I think that you have to sort of put in the work of making sure that you are still staying informed in good non-fake news way. Read books,
sure.
read the news, watch documentaries, like keep up with the world, because it's constantly changing, constantly evolving. And you don't necessarily have to have these conversations in college. You don't necessarily have to have formal, curriculum training, anything like that, to still be like a person who contributes, who is a part of society, a part of functioning, a functioning democracy.
You can have those at home.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to give you a top 5 rundown and you tell me your top 5 of each of these. I wrote down a few different subjects, so I'd ask them all. I may ask more. Who knows?
Yeah.
But you mentioned books. What's your top 5 books?
Oh man, this is terrible.
Put you on the spot.
most of the books I actually read are fiction.
Oh, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, and so one of my I really like Terry Brooks, and so one of my favorite books of his I read was Magic Kingdom for Sale, which is phenomenal. It's it's a hard fantasy book. I also loved the Hunger Games series.
Oh yeah.
And this was as book form before they got purchased and turned into movies, because as a book, the cultural critique in these books was just like phenomenal. And then the way that she sold the movie rights and the way they got turned into such big blockbusters, to me, I felt completely betrayed the message in that book. Whatever, people do what they want. So I guess then I also really like the Ashes trilogy. I'm really into like post-apocalyptic stuff. And so the Ashes trilogy, it's like Ashes, Monsters, and then I can't think of what the third one is. But that's really good. I wouldn't be surprised if the movie rights got purchased at some point.
I hadn't heard of that.
It's really good. And then when I was in high school, like two other books I read like for class that I come back to all the time. One was White Oleander, which is a really good book. They turned that into a crappy movie too. But the book was really good. And then the other one was Capper Boy, and we read that in high school because I had a really amazing English teacher who like introduced us to like a little bit more out there books. I actually did a book report for her class on Catcher in the Rye and how much I hated it, and I thought that Holden Caulfield was like Holden Caulfield, whatever the hell his name is, that he was like a whiner and super privileged, and she loved it. Like. Because everybody just like eats it up with that book. And I was like, this is garbage. This guy sucks. So Capper Boy was one that we read in her class, and it was about apartheid in South Africa. And it was, I mean, like I'm crying so much reading it. It was just, it was devastating. And that was and so like, that's an important thing to like develop empathy for people who, like apartheid was not long ago and they're still suffering the effects of it. And so to be able to confront that and be like, okay, wow, like this is a problem. I think those are important things to have happen to you in school. But that was high school, so everybody has to do that.
All right, so we have named us some top 5 books. Let's go with top 5 colleges.
Top 5 colleges. Yeah. Ooh.
It's hard to get competitive.
Oh man. I'm gonna give all of mine. My 3 are going in there. So University of Toledo. I did have a great time in undergrad. I loved it, and I would not have gone on to grad school if it wasn't for the people I was with and the people I worked with. And I worked on campus, and that had a huge impact on me too. I got to know my professors a lot better.
Nice.
And then Kent State University, because it's a beautiful place. We were actually in the building where the shooting like happened in the parking lot. And so like their memorial is there. The May 4th memorial is there. It's a fantastic place. It was a really good program. I was actually just talking to my former thesis advisor, who I think is like the department head now, just the other night. We were messaging. And then Bowling Green, where I got my PhD, which I have referred students to their grad program so many times.
That's cool.
Like from here, because transitioning from BG to Fort Smith was not too difficult, because like looking around, it's a pretty similar landscape. I mean, it's hillier here and the humidity is garbage, but it looks very similar to like BG or even where I grew up. And so I felt comfortable. It felt kind of comforting and kind of homey to me, like when I came here to interview. I'll also say UA Fort Smith, because I love this place. I love my job. I think that I think we're doing a really, really, really good job with the way that we're like making changes and moving forward here, like in the program, but also the university in general. I found a lot of like really good support here.
That's good.
I really like Dr. Barron a lot too. And so 5th one, man, I feel like I should say Ohio State, just because like I'm from there.
Oh yeah.
But I also don't want to.
Well, they have good wrestling, so.
Yeah. I really don't know. I mean, like I know a lot about colleges and stuff, and I really wanted to. There's a college in Pittsburgh I wanted to go to, and I changed at the last minute, decided to go to Kent instead. But I think it was at Park Place, Point Place, something like that. It was a really nice school. So there you go. I'll put that one on there for the end.
All right. So we'll let's go here and we'll talk about top 5 bands or top 5 songs. That can be.
Oh man.
That can be bands or songs. That do whichever one.
Okay, I'll probably have to do bands.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Okay, so I mean, I could do songs. So
you can mix them if you want to.
So I'm like a pop punk person. Like I always have been. So like Fall Out Boy and Panic at the Disco are still
really
like I come back to them. Like, and Panic actually just released a new album, and a friend of mine and I talked about going to see them when they're playing in like Tulsa or something in August, and so I think we're gonna go. But so man, so one of my favorite Fall Out Boy songs though is 4th of July. I really like that. One of my favorite Panic songs is Nicotine. That's a really good one too. recently started listening to Bleachers, and I really like them. The song by them I really like is Roller Coaster.
Is that a remix?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
And so, I mean, like, my music taste changes like constantly. Like, I also have so Queen. I go back to Queen a lot. My sister and I,
nice.
my sister, my mom and I, we'll like scream sing "Don't Stop Me Now." It's like it's like our song together. And then I'll just throw this one out there. "Brown Eyed Girl" is my mom's song for me. Like, we all have brown eyes, but she always said I had the brownest. And so like Brown Eyed Girl, Van Morrison was her song for me. So those are my top 5.
Nice. That's cool. All right, let's hit up one more and we'll probably end it there. Maybe. Okay. We do top 5 sports.
Oh God.
They just keep getting tougher.
Yeah. This one's tough because I don't even know if I can go with 5. So I swam in high school. I loved swimming. I still love swimming. It was I lettered in that my senior year. So I'm a big swimmer. I love water in general. So I'll say swimming. Baseball, my brother played a lot growing up, and we always had so much fun. And so like it's a sport I understand. I've always liked baseball. It can get pretty boring. And I don't regularly follow any teams or anything like that, but I do like baseball.
Yeah, it's much more interesting when you play than when you watch it.
Yeah. Yes, yeah. I got super into basketball like a couple years ago and then stopped. But I really enjoyed watching like some Thunder games on TV for a little while.
Nice.
It was kind of part of like living here.
Everybody's talking about them or going to watch them.
Yeah, everybody was talking about it. So I was like, all right, cool. And it was really exciting to watch. And it was also really exciting like when the Cavs won. Was that last year?
Yeah, the championship.
Yeah, and again, like an Ohio thing, like it was like it's like everybody was like a little bit like proud that day, like the next day.
Even if you're not a basketball fan, you were there.
Exactly, even if you're not, it was like Ohio. And then let's see, I've only named 3.
Yeah, I think so. Swimming, baseball, and basketball.
Yeah, and so I went rock climbing a couple months ago, and I'm hoping to go do that again. I loved it. So I'd like to do a little bit more of that. Yeah. It was very, my arms were so sore. My like legs were covered in bruises, but it was so worth it. It was a really cool thing. And I've always wanted to get into like kayaking. I've done like pretty boring versions of kayaking where you're just kind of going around like a big pond or a little lake. But I'd love to do like it on an actual river at some point. So there we go.
That sounds like a challenge. That's a big challenge.
Yeah. I have a lot more upper body strength than I do lower body though. So like that's kind of my thing.
Well, cool. All right. We're going to wrap it up here and appreciate the time. I hope I got everything that I wanted to ask down, or if did you have anything that you wanted to add to it, promote anything or thank anybody?
No, I don't think so. Just hello, yay. This is fun.
Cool. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
For past, current, and future episodes of the Mega Talks podcast, go to iTunes and subscribe to the Mega Talks podcast. Also, you can find us at podbean.com, the Mega Talks podcast. Another good source is YouTube, Mega Talks podcast. Like, share, subscribe, leave a comment if you're there. Let me know what you think about the podcast, what you think about the guest, if you want to contact them, or if you have any ideas of who you want to hear on the show. And I'll try to make that happen. And I'll be talking to you guys soon here on the Mega Talks podcast.